Death is just another trick of the archons. It does not close the door, it opens the same corridor. Again, there are entities that do not chase you, they observe you. They wait for the exact moment when your consciousness falters, and when the body dissolves. They offer forms, voices, magnets. They offer faces you loved. They offer answers you always wanted to hear. It is the ritual of return. In the Nag Hammadi manuscripts, this is described without metaphors. The soul crosses portals guarded by intelligences that test its vibration with codes. It is not about sin. It is not about judgment. It is about vibrational recognition. Who you are determines where you return, or if you return. But there is a sound that cannot be manipulated, a memory that cannot be erased, and it was sealed 1600 years ago, waiting for this moment. In this video, you will access a map forgotten by history, a vibrational path that begins in the darkness of matter and culminates in the ascension of pure consciousness, based on the Nag Hammadi manuscripts, texts that challenged empires and were sealed for almost 2 millennia. We will reveal the hidden truth about what happens to the soul after death. These Gnostic writings are not just spiritual theories, but vibrational codes of liberation that resonate with recent discoveries in quantum physics. They accurately describe the cycle of vibrational imprisonment that keeps consciousness trapped on the earthly plane, and more importantly, they reveal the secret to breaking this cycle. You will understand how archetypal entities shape the reality we experience, and how the recognition of the eternal self is the only key capable of crossing the portals that seal our spiritual prison. What will be presented here can dismantle entire belief systems and activate within you a memory that was only dormant. Imagine an Egyptian peasant digging through the hot sands of Nag Hammadi in search of fertilizer for his crops. Suddenly, his hoe strikes something rigid, a sealed clay jar covered by centuries of silence. Upon breaking it, he does not find grains or tools, but codices, fragile pages, almost dust, with words that seem to pulse. Gospels without crosses, gods without temples, death without end. Among the 13 volumes, one contains a vision that subverts all Western logic about the soul, the Gospel of Philip. In it, death is not liberation, it is a test. The soul, upon detaching from the body, encounters beings that do not judge, but test. Voices that do not ask, but decipher vibrations. Each page seemed to scream untold truths. And in that instant, what was buried was not just paper, it was a map, a calling, a summons for those who still remember. In the 3rd century, somewhere between the banks of the Nile and the hidden alleys of Alexandria, manuscripts traveled the corridors of the night between silent hands. They were gospels without dogma, doctrines without altars, transmitted by men and women who saw beyond the veil of appearances. According to these texts, the sensory world is not the work of the source, but of a lesser intelligence, the demiurge, who separated from the fullness, shaped a captive reality. Upon diving into flesh, the soul forgets its celestial origin and begins to confuse illusion with the real. These writings did not seek conversions, but recollections. They speak of archetypal entities, the archons, who rule the lower spheres and keep consciousness captive after death, and of gnosis as the only fire capable of illuminating the way back. In the year 367, Bishop Athanasius of Alexandria decreed the destruction of all gospels considered unauthorized. What threatened hegemony had to disappear. In response, Gnostic monks buried the codices in clay jars in the dunes of Nag Hammadi, sealing with silence that which could not be erased. In 1945, Almost 16 centuries later, a peasant broke the seal of time. He found 13 codices written in Coptic: the Gospel of Thomas, the Gospel of Philip, the Apocryphon of John. Texts that reveal the afterlife as a vibrational crossing between portals, where conscious entities test the soul's degree of remembrance. There is no moral judgment, only resonance. What was once hidden as heresy now returns as spiritual architecture. And perhaps the world only began to hear them when it finally began to remember. What the ancients called gnosis today resonates with discoveries at the frontier of quantum physics. The theoretical physicist Amit Goswami states that consciousness is not produced by the brain, but precedes it. It would be the basis of the real, not its byproduct. This principle directly echoes the Gnostic view. The material world is a secondary manifestation, not the origin. In quantum mechanics, the collapse of the wave function is caused by observation, and the conscious observer becomes the agent that determines reality. This nonlinear dynamic coincides with what the Nag Hammadi manuscripts describe as dimensional portals. They are not physical locations, but vibrational states that respond to the soul's level of lucidity. Matter does not have final control. Consciousness does. When this understanding activates, the enchantment is broken. The veil begins to tear. There are 3 vibrational portals described in the Nag Hammadi manuscripts that, when understood and activated, transform the soul's passage after death and the very experience of life. The first is the recognition of the veil. The soul, upon incarnating, forgets. This forgetting is not merely spiritual amnesia. It is an entanglement in mental and emotional patterns induced by intelligences operating in the invisible. These forces, called archons, do not manifest as grotesque forms, but as impulses, fears, desires, and crystallized beliefs. Identifying them is the beginning of liberation. When a repetitive thought tries to convince you that you are separated from the source, it is the signature of an archon. When an emotion drags you into cycles of guilt or resignation, it is the veil acting. Recognizing this with lucidity is the first rupture. The second portal is the remembrance of the self. It is not enough to deny the illusion. It is necessary to remember what lies beyond it. Gnosis, as the texts taught, is not an accumulation of information, but a direct activation of primordial memory. You know who you are, you just forgot. The practice here is vibrational, silencing the noise of the world and mentally or verbally chanting the mantra of return. I am the light that sees the light. This phrase is not symbolic. It acts as a resonance code, deprogramming false identities and restoring the luminous core of the soul. Each time you pronounce it with intention, a portal aligns. The third and final portal is the resurrection in life. The texts make it clear. It is not about waiting for death to ascend. The body is the forge where consciousness is shaped. Each conscious gesture, each choice aligned with the real self, is a vibrational recoding. When you act with compassion, when you breathe with presence, when you silence yourself to listen to the inner wisdom, you are rebuilding the body of light, the only vehicle that crosses the dimensional layers after death. These 3 portals are not theoretical, they are real accesses, and the soul that crosses them does not return to the cycle anymore. Emily grew up with a silent terror of death. Since the age of 5, she had recurring nightmares of dark corridors and voices calling her back. She became a holistic therapist in an attempt to understand what lay behind this ancestral fear. But nothing freed her until she accidentally found an annotated translation of the Nag Hammadi manuscripts. She was not seeking religious answers, but she felt there was something different there. While studying the texts, she discovered that the fear of death was not natural, but programmed. That invisible entities feed on this vibration and keep the soul spinning between unconscious lives. She then decided to apply the 3 portals. She began by identifying the thoughts that pulled her downward, writing down each one as if observing an intruder. Next, she repeated the mantra of light every time panic arose. I am the light that sees the light. In less than 3 months, the nightmares ceased. They were replaced by lucid dreams, where she flew over deserts and encountered forgotten faces. She felt her body light during the day, and a silent presence that accompanied her. For the first time, she not only understood death, she crossed it in life. Today, Emily teaches vibrational gnosis to others who, like her, just needed to remember. It is common to hear that all of this is nothing but ancient symbolism, religious metaphors from a distant time. But it is not. What the Gnostics wrote 1600 years ago aligns disturbingly with principles confirmed by contemporary physics. The collapse of the wave function, described by physicists like Eugene Wigner and Amit Goswami, demonstrates that the consciousness of the observer alters reality. This is more than spiritual poetry. It is measurable vibrational structure. Moreover, soul-crossing practices, almost identical to those described in Nag Hammadi, are found in the Tibetan Book of the Dead and in Egyptian ascension texts. The soul being interrogated, the body of light being built in life, the recognition of the self as the key. This is not an ancient belief trying to survive. It is a profound truth that simply changed garments over time, and now it has spoken again. Close your eyes for a moment. Breathe deeply. Imagine a dark veil resting on the top of your head. With each inhale, feel this veil beginning to dissolve. It is not real. It is made of memories that are not yours, fears that were not born with you. As you exhale, release images, names, identities. Inhale again. And now, repeat silently with vibrational intention. I remember who I am. Allow this phrase to reverberate like a wave inside your chest. It does not need to make logical sense. It is an encoded reminder, a sound key. Exhale, releasing all effort. Inhale, the remembrance. Exhale, the forgetting. Continue in this flow for a few more moments. Do not force, allow. You are not trying to achieve anything. You are simply undoing what was never yours. When you feel ready, open your eyes slowly. Something has been reactivated. 3 portals have been revealed. First, recognize the veil. See the internal and external archons that sabotage your light. Second, remember who you are. Activate gnosis as a living memory of the eternal self. Third, resurrect in life. Transform each conscious act into a vibrational construction of the body of light. These portals are not outside. They are vibrating right now within you. To remember is to resurrect while still alive. This is the message that echoes behind every line of the Nag Hammadi manuscripts. Death, as we understand it, is not the end. It is just another fold in the cycle of forgetting. And the true challenge is not to die. It is not to forget who you are. When consciousness crosses the portals with lucidity, it does not return. When the self recognizes itself as light, no force can redirect it back to matter. What we call the afterlife is, in fact, a vibrational continuity of what we are now. That is why the practice of remembrance is not optional. It is spiritual survival. It is not necessary to flee from death. It is necessary to cross it in life, with the eyes of the soul open and steady. Plotinus, the Neoplatonic philosopher who lived in the same century as these texts, said, "We must not flee the body, but rather what binds us to it. Ascension begins when we cease to react like shadows and start to act like light. May this rediscovered wisdom no longer be silenced. May each conscious thought from now on be a vibrational step toward the source. You are not alone, and you never were. There is a code within you waiting to be remembered, and it begins with a choice to repeat or to ascend. If this video resonated within you, like it now and subscribe to the channel. Activate the bell so that each new portal reveals the next step of your journey. Share it with someone who carries the same silent questions, and write in the comments the mantra phrase, "I am the light that sees the light." This declaration is not symbolic. It alters vibration. The truth does not belong to those who keep it, but to those who live it. May this seed germinate in silence until it blooms in clarity. May your path be made of presence, courage, and remembrance. Consciousness does not wait. It awakens. And when it awakens, it changes everything.